This is Esther Littlefield, and you're listening to the Radical Radiance Podcast.
Oh, thrilled to get to have this conversation with you today. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you, Rebecca. I am really honored to be here and to chat with you today.
For you to share a little bit about work that you do and sort of what God has you up to these days. I know this is the first time we've had you on the show, and I'm so honored to get to have this conversation with you. Endorsed Do the Thing, which I'm so incredibly thankful for. And there's a reason for that because of the work that you do. And I felt that this was a message that you do so well in your work. And I just would love to start by having you share a little bit of that with listeners.
All right. Thank you. Well, personally, I live in Maine with my husband, Scott, and our daughter, Kirsten, and our dog and 2 cats. And we love all things outdoors adventures, especially in the summertime. And professionally, I work with Christian women building an online business. And specifically, I help them leverage their expertise so that they can make a greater impact and earn an income. And so I love working with women in specifically helping them utilize their gifts, their God-given gifts and strengths, build a business that allows them to thrive and live their ideal life and whatever that looks like to them. So that's really where my passion is. I have been podcasting for several years, almost 5 years now. And I just love everything about, serving women and really helping them to embrace their gifts and lead with confidence. And then if they have a business, to be able to inspire them to take that and turn it into something that really allows them to bring in an income. So that's a little bit about what I do and why I do it.
Tell it so everybody go subscribe there as well.
Okay. Yes. So the first podcast I have is the Christian Woman Leadership Podcast. And I actually have a second podcast, the Christian Woman Business Podcast. So that one is just more niche down, specific to business.
I'm so excited about next conversation that we have going through the book of Do the Thing chapter by chapter. We're going to be in chapter 2 today, which is called The Freedom of a Blank Canvas. And so the thought behind that is, what do we do and walk through seasons when God calls us into something new, or maybe there's a new assignment before us and we're having to really trust him and that longing for that to him and those next steps of obedience. And so we're going to do this in every one of these 12 episodes. We're going to walk through a couple passages that were mentioned in the chapter and sort of dig into those a little bit and then talk broadly about the topic as well. And so I've pulled a couple of passages that are mentioned in this chapter. The first is a really popular that I know if you've been around the church or you've been in scripture a while, you've heard this verse and been encouraged as I've over the course of my life. It's in the book of Psalm. It's Psalm 119, verse 105. Word is a light to my path. And that the idea has always encouraged me and been a good reminder, I think, to me of leads and guides and directs us, right? And our calling of, he doesn't give us the whole path, which sometimes we wish he would, right? But that negate our dependence, our great dependence on him. And so he really does give us that lamp that lights and shines the way for the next few steps of our calling, which is what we're talking about today. And so I wonder, as you read that verse, Esther, does it encourage you to remember that God does light for our next logical step of obedience, even when we can't see the full picture?
Well, I love that this is the passage that you picked to talk about first, because the theme of light is just something that has always been part of my life. And I've always thought about it in regards to how God really does that. He really does show us step by step that next path. So I think for me, it is basically the thing that I hold on to so many times, especially in dark seasons and seasons when I can't figure out where the path is even going. I am a planner. And I am a long-term vision thinker. And I like to have the 5-year vision and the 20-year plan. And I love to think about what is ahead and figure out how to get there. And I can logically create the plan if I know where I'm going. And what I find in life is that that's often not how God works. He often doesn't even show us that end destination. Sometimes it's there. I think there's been times in my life where he has given me a vision of maybe where he's taking me. And then I can sort of, with his help, he's still showing me step by step, but there's still a little bit of my ability to kind of create that plan. But then other times it's I don't even know where he's taking me. I have no idea. And it really is a time of trusting and recognizing that, he's going to just show one step at a time. And that's hard for those of us who are planners and visionaries who want to have the big picture before we take the step.
Absolutely. And I'm very similar in that way of I love dreaming about where God is taking me next. There's nothing more than a good planner, a good vision document, a good proposal plan for a project that's going to come together. I thrive on that. And I actually recently, and this was I retook Strengths Finders. I hadn't done it in about 10 years and found that to be probably one of the more helpful personality assessment type things that I've done. The way that it's framed of really hone in on we would you as a believer and wired you, right? And let's thrive in that. And it was interesting, 2 domains, primary, that all my fell underneath were strategic thinking and which I found so interesting because as I wonder if you would agree in coaching women, having conversations, typically if you're a visionary, and if you're a doer, it's so difficult for you to pull above this and really be a visionary. And what I've found interesting to explore that I think God's knit a little bit of both in me, right? And I'm thankful that it sounds like it's similar for you. And I think that's also an interesting God, right? Is because I do enjoy both being up high and visionary and also being in the trenches of doing the work. But when I don't know where we're headed and what that's going to look like, that is such a struggle. So I don't know. Does that resonate with you?
It does. It absolutely does. And I've had the same question of like, okay, I can think about the future and come up with I love ideas. Like I love ideation and just thinking of things to do. But I also love to think about the plan and how we're going to get there. And like you said, it's if you don't know where you're going, and that is very relevant to my current life. As I was sharing before we started recording, I'm in a season where I don't know what the future holds for me and my family. And it is truly, I was just texting with a friend this morning. I was like, just taking it day by day, literally day by day, one step at a time, because I don't know where God is leading us. And so that is really a time where this verse, I was like, it's I've got to trust that the light, when you have a lamp and you're walking on a path, you don't see 5 steps in front of you. You see 1 or 2 steps at a time. And so it's a real time to trust that he is going to show, even though I would prefer to have like the spotlight at the end where I can at least see the destination and then figure out what obstacles are going to come up that we have to overcome and how are we going to like get over that hill and all of those things.
Because a big plan on how to handle it.
Yes,
right.
Exactly.
And so, yes, I relate to that so much. And I think the thing that encourages my heart so much in knowing that we get a step or 2 worth of knowledge at a time is this other promise that we see in scripture. And that's the other passage that I pulled out was in the book of James. And I'm so, so thankful for this and just how God offers us his wisdom. And so I'm going to read James 1 verse that says, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. And as I think about this of walking in something new and trusting God, just this promise of wisdom is such an encouragement to me. We can ask God for any promises to give it to us generously without reproach, right? And so in seasons like this, and talked about it, you're walking through one of these as we speak, how does it encourage you just to know that something we can stand on? Lord, he promises to give it to us generously as we walk into something new. How does that encourage you?
I think it is just a real comfort. And what I'm learning about wisdom is that I used to think that wisdom had to look like this, like really big revelation, like it needed to be something really phenomenal. And I think sometimes what I'm learning right now even is that sometimes wisdom comes from God through a variety of methods and things that maybe don't seem really earth-shattering. Like sometimes it's just a really small conversation with a friend and something that they say is wisdom. And that is wisdom from God, right?
Yeah.
He's the author of it. It's just he's using someone else to share it with us. Sometimes it's obviously from scripture clearly, but sometimes it's, for me, I've been really practicing sitting quietly and just trying to listen for his voice. And sometimes it's those really quiet moments where he gives the wisdom. And it's, again, sometimes it's just enough wisdom to get through that one day.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not like, again, it's what I would prefer to have the wisdom be. All right, Esther, here is the 5-step plan to survive the next 6 months of your life. And that you're going to do these 5 things in order and everything is going to be okay. But sometimes it's just like, what is that next step? And then the last thing I think that I'm finding with wisdom in the way God is working in my life is that he has given each one of us. I mean, he lives inside of us, right? If we're a believer, he lives in us. And so sometimes it's learning to trust myself. And I don't want that to be taken wrong, but like that gut feeling or that instinct that I have in a given situation, that's actually from him. And that I can trust that instead of second guessing it all the time. And that's an ongoing learning for me of how to do that, because I often will second guess and I'll say, oh, that's probably not from God. That's probably not, or I need to get opinions from 10 other people before I move forward on something. And sometimes he's like, no, just trust what I've already given
I told
you.
Yeah. You don't need anybody else's permission to be obedient to me. Yeah.
Right. And that for me is, I think that's probably the biggest thing that I have found with wisdom lately, is that I'm just learning to sit quietly, listen for him, and then do the thing that he's asking me to do, and not have to check in with other people and get their approval or non-approval of what I'm thinking he's saying to me. Because if it's from him, I don't really have to get that validated from other people.
So good. I love that. And I'm thinking, to pull us out a little bit more, we've both likely through these seasons, I know I have, of God inviting me into something new. As I reflect on those seasons in your own life, Esther, I wonder if there's other things that come to mind that has taught you or shown you in these times that might encourage others coming to the day.
Yeah, so I think one season where he was asking me into something new that I learned a lot from is way back in 2020. I was feeling really burned out from the work I was doing at the time, and really kind of thinking, okay, like he had called me to write. I knew that writing was a thing and sharing a message was something he had put on my heart when I was a teenager, and I was not doing it. I was ignoring that call basically on my life. And so there was this kind of moment where I realized something has to change. And so I stepped out into this new season of basically stopping the work I had been doing and stepped into this let's go into a blog, let's write, let's figure out how to make this work. And in that, I learned a lot, but I learned that one thing is that when you step into the gifts and the calling that he has given you, you are going to be a lot more fulfilled and have so much more joy and energy in your work. And what I realized, like looking back, I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back, I can see how much of the work I was doing prior was not in alignment with my gifts, my strengths, my calling, all of the things. And so no wonder it was a struggle. No wonder I was feeling burnt out, because I just wasn't doing things that were in alignment with who God made me to be. Yeah. So that was one thing I learned was, when you trust and step out into those things that you believe he's asking you to do, and it's in alignment with your gifts and your calling, you're going to have a lot more fun in your work. And then the second thing I think is really just learning that he is faithful. And I mean, that's like an ongoing thing that I learn all the time. But, when he asked me to start my podcast, I was like, okay, but I don't really know what I'm doing. Like, I mean, I learned a lot about podcasting, but I don't really know if this is, the right thing. But again, I sort of had this internal, do this. And I just saw his faithfulness in when I started that podcast. I started seeing the fruit of it, and I started seeing people being impacted by it, and women, reaching out and asking me questions and feeling seen. And so his faithfulness faithfulness of what he does, that we're only responsible for the steps that we are called to take. And whether that podcast reached one person or 2,000 people, that's not up to me. That's up to him. And so it was a matter of me seeing his faithfulness I just did the obedient step of saying yes to starting the podcast. And then I let him show me the results afterwards. And those are a couple lessons that I can think of, times where I've had to step out. And so it's really encouraging when you can look back on, oh, I took that step and this is what God did. A reminder when you're in another season of not knowing what's coming, because it's just like, oh yeah, these seasons are just going to keep happening. They're going to be, once we get through one phase of life, there's going to be something else in the future that we don't see the path. So we can look back at these things that we've been through and see, okay, God is faithful. He's gonna bring the fulfillment. He's gonna bring the results. I don't have to be the one that produces that.
Things I do from time to time is go back and reread my prayer journals from a previous season. I did that recently. I'm a pastor's wife, and we in a small town in South Mississippi, and always that God might see, which is where we would consider home, and reading back through just when there was such a long, just trusting God that he would be faithful, his timing of whatever that looked like. Now on the other side, he moved back about 6 months, just seeing how God has answered those prayers and just encouraged so much as I, am still walking into new moments, trusting God in new things and in new assignments, remembering his past faithfulness match in that. And so I love that you share that. And you touched on this a little bit earlier, but because we talk about it in this chapter. And it's this idea of, we call obedience in the book of, hey, I might know it's God calling me to do, and there's a few things we do in that, right? We can say, well, I'm going to talk to a few more people, approval of man issue that we all from time to time struggle in. I know I've seen of what I'm about to say, and I've seen it a lot too in other women of, well, when we have this very clear answer from God. And so this idea of deferred obedience really meaning we know what our next step is in stepping out in faith, right? We've all done it and we've all bumped up against that struggle. And so I don't know, what challenge or encouragement for the listener who might find themselves in one of those moments as they listen today?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I mean, anytime that has been my story, which it has been, delaying taking the step that I know he's asking me to take, is when I look back, I wish I would have done it earlier. That's what it always is. And even in the end of 2020, I was looking at my business and I was kind of basically at that point building 2 separate businesses, and I was planning 2020 and I was like, oh my word, I'm going to have all these things going on. I had all my launches planned out. I had all this stuff I was going to do for these 2 separate audiences that I was going to serve. And I was talking with a friend and she was like, I'm not sure how you're going to do that. And so she kind of challenged me a little bit with like my thinking. And really, when it got down to it, I knew in my heart what I wanted to do. And I knew what God had been kind of pointing me towards for a year. And I had been afraid to step out. And it was imposter syndrome. It was, I don't know if I have what it takes, all of those things, And finally, I stepped out and did that in 2020. And I shifted my business and I made changes and I leaned into the place that I felt I could make the biggest impact. And looking back, I was like, oh my goodness, this is what I've been missing out on. Now, do I, maybe the timing was right. Like maybe it ended up being the right timing, but I think I knew before then that was what God was asking me to do. And I was kind of like, I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes, doing that whole, and I'm not sure which excuse that falls under in your book, but I'm sure but I kind of just like was having that self-doubt of like,
yes.
I'm probably not equipped to do that yet. And I need to wait a little longer and just, get more experience and yeah. So, but I wished I would have done it sooner looking back. So that would be my encouragement for someone is you're never going to feel ready. Like you're never going to feel ready. You just have to take action.
Right. Of feeling, we're never give us his wisdom and his discernment in when is the right time. Right. And so I think is when we do very clearly know we've heard from God, and it's that fear or that doubt or the insecurity that's really rearing its head and keeping us stuck. That's the moment about pulling ourselves out of and really entrusting that to him and remembering too, you said it earlier, we are partnering with him. We have the Holy Spirit, the same power that raised Jesus from the grave lives inside of us. And we are partnering with him every day as we take those next steps of obedience. And sometimes we, know those truths on a head level, but what does it look like to actually live that? And so that's such a full example of that. I love that. And I pulled this chat I'd love for us to just kind of talk about for a minute. It's one of my favorites. And it says, in a life sold out to his lead, kind of back to this conversation that we're having, his glory is the goal. Presence is the prize. His glory is the goal. We are working to the kingdom to advance the gospel. But the real prize for us is presence and walking with him as we entrust those next steps to him. And so I wonder, what does that stir up in you? Have you seen that to be true in your own life?
Yeah, I think for so long, I did not have that perspective. And I had the perspective of the goal was doing all the things for God, right? Like the things I could accomplish for him instead of really being in relationship with him. And so I have been seeing that more and more, that really the work that I do doesn't really matter. Like in the long run, all the work that I'm doing is, if it's not bringing honor and glory to him, then it doesn't matter. And if my life is not about living in his presence and being in communion with him, then again, the stuff that I'm spending my time on isn't really worth it. Yeah. And so I think it's just like, it's a changing of perspective from what the world, and even in some Christian circles. I mean, I grew up as a Christian. I grew up in a Christian environment, but I was still very much focused on the accolades and the achieving the goals and being seen in a certain light of, if Esther does XYZ, she's going to get validation and she's going to get attention. And therefore I'm doing this for God. But really I'm doing it so that I can be seen, right?
Yeah.
and really changing that around and saying, okay, I want to honor him in how I do my work, but also I just want to know him and I want to be in relationship with him. And I don't get it right all the time. I mean, I think this is still an area that he's working on with me. And even in the past few months, like I had to put a pause on almost everything in my life, in my business specifically. I paused my podcast. I paused everything because I did not have the capacity to do the work. And so that was a real humbling experience, and recognizing that, guess what, even if all I do is sit with Jesus, it's still enough. Like, you know what I mean? And that has been a really good reminder. My validation and my identity doesn't come from the things that I'm doing in my life.
It's so within another episode, but just the importance too of remembering anything that calls us to do, we have the opportunity go and make disciples in that. And I just think this is a good place to plug this in. So many times we have created the box of what ministry looks like. Yeah. When I think one day, and everything is set right and we're in the presence of God, and we fully realize how God is at work and how he's knitting all things together. I think we'll, at least I know more rightly see this, but I can think of my life when God had me in a corporate job that I honestly despised. And I thought, like, man, I feel so called to ministry. I feel so called to encourage women and to write and to speak. And God, you've knit this in me. I don't know what you're doing here from 9 to 5, this job that I don't really enjoy. And for many years, I was a recruiter. I every day got to wake up to questions, right? And interview people for jobs. And I had no idea God was knitting in me would be so necessary for the work that he would eventually call me to do one day with podcast speaking. And so today I can see that hindsight, right? And so for the listener coming to the feeling in a similar way about maybe their job or a current event, we just don't know what God is developing and knitting into us that will be so vital and necessary for where he's taking us next. And he makes us matter. And there's no assignment insignificant. And we have the opportunity to minister and encourage and go and make disciples. He has our feet planted. And so I just think that being in this conversation. So I love that. So good. One of the questions that I'm asking all that come onto this series, you've shared so much wisdom throughout this episode. As you think back on the go-getter, the girl coming to the episode who desperately wants to see her calling from a gospel perspective, I wonder what would be your best piece of it for her?
Oh, I think that my best piece of advice is that it kind of goes along with what you were just saying.
Yeah.
Your calling in terms of who you are called to be and the ultimate purpose of making disciples will never change. That is an eternal purpose and calling for all of us. But the way it looks throughout your life will change. And the way you live out your calling can change. And so to have this idea that you're aiming for the one thing that you're meant to do, I think is the wrong perspective. I think that, that's why I'm saying what you just shared was so valuable, because I think back and I spent the first 10 years of my career in social work. And, now I don't do anything with social work, but I think all the work that I did in that 10 years, I learned so much. And a lot of it I pull into my current work of coaching women and working with women and having a broad perspective of what impacts our lives on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. And then I was in network marketing and direct sales. And that wasn't my calling, but the things that I learned impact my day-to-day now. And I could still use that as a tool to reach people and to make a difference and to live out the purpose that God was giving me. And so I guess my advice, if I can shorten it, is stop looking for the one thing you're meant to do and just see how God can use you in the here and now wherever you are and take that next step. And if you sense him leading you out of where you are, great. But if not, just see, how can I impact the people in my life right now? How can I bless people with my gifts? How can I bring him glory in my current day-to-day life?
And there is a question that I ask that comes onto the Radical Radiance podcast. We really have a heart to help women see what it looks like to the heart of Christ in their life, their work, their relationships. And so I just want to think back at work in your heart in this season. And I wonder how you would answer the question of, what about Jesus makes you radiant?
I think right now it's his hope that he gives. And when I think about the dark seasons that all of us go through and the darkness of the world around us, it's often because people don't have hope. And Jesus is the reason we can have hope for the future. And a friend I was talking to a few weeks ago, said I was making some statement about the future and not knowing what it holds and struggling to see it as something good. And she said, if Jesus is in your future, then your future is going to be good. And I was like, oh my goodness, you're right. That's the hope, right? The hope isn't about what circumstances look like. It's about who you're with. And so I think for me, it's right now, it's that hope that he brings in my life. That's what makes me radiant. And it's also what I hope to bring to others is the hope that's in him, the light that's in him that can impact us and give us that hope.
Love to give you just to share a little bit about, again, the work that you do and where listeners can find you, anything that you want to plug these days that listeners who are coming to this conversation might enjoy or be a part of. I want to give you space for that as well.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So the best place to connect with me is at my website, which is just my name, Esther Littlefield. And you can find both of my podcasts there. You can find how to work with me. The main ways that I work with my clients are through a mastermind program for Christian women business owners. And then I also have some other group programs that I run from time to time. And then I have a bunch of courses as well. So there's a variety of ways to kind of connect with me, learn from me there. And then I do have a free resource that I'll mention. It's the Ideal Life and Business Guide. And so again, this would be if someone is wanting to start a business or already has a business. And one of the things that I have found is that a lot of times women just go gung-ho into creating their business without thinking about what they want their life to look like. And so the guide is kind of designed to help you think about, what does your ideal life look like? And then what would your ideal business be that could fit in that? And even if you already have a business, it might help you rework some things. And so that's just at estherlittlefield.com/ideal. And that's the link to grab that free guide.
I'd be more thankful for you, Esther, and just your voice into this topic, and was so thankful to get to pull you into this episode. And again, I'm so grateful for your just such a kind endorsement of being, and glad that this connected us. And we certainly have a similar passion for women, encouraging women. And so it's just a joy to get to connect with you. And I appreciate you being my guest today.
Thank you, Rebecca.